Blended learning has become a popular strategy for engaging students in the classroom, and there are a lot of different models when trying to incorporate it.
And one of the more popular models is the station rotation model. And using Google Slides is a great tool to help facilitate that. And we're going to show you how to do that on this week's episode.
So before we talk about some strategies involved in the station rotation model, let's actually define it. So some of you guys are unfamiliar with it, so that you'll need to think about 3 different things when trying to incorporate a station rotation blended learning model in your classroom. The first thing you're going to want to do is group your students. Next, you'll want to come up with a fixed model that your students will follow. So your students are going to go from one group or one station to another. And the next is you're going to want to make sure that each group of students hits every station.
When thinking about grouping your students together, there's a lot of different factors to consider. Some teachers will group their students based off interest, but one of the more common ways that teachers will put students into groups is by levels. Oftentimes, teachers will use a pre-assessment to measure the students' understanding and then use that data to put the students into group that they can follow with their station rotation.
And the last thing that you'll want to keep in mind is making sure that the content at each station meets the level of each group. So the first strategy we're going to discuss is having your students collaborate in one of their stations. So a great way to do this is by using the sharing and collaboration setting inside of Google Slides.
One of the options that you can use for your collaboration station in your station rotation model is Google Slides sharing. So this will give you the ability to have students work on one slideshow simultaneously. So what you currently see is a slideshow that we have, and I have another individual as a part of the slideshow, and we can begin constructing this slide as a team. So if I go and add a brand new slide to this presentation, I can begin working on this slide, and my partner can also add his slide, and we can begin building this slideshow together as a group.
One of the advantages as a teacher to using the sharing features inside of Google Slides is that it gives me the ability to review the history of that slide. So now I can see how all the students have been engaged in the work for that particular slide. Now, another good station that you can include in your station rotation model is the teacher-led station.
So if you're using Google Slides in your teacher-led station rotation, we have a resource that will make that station a lot more interactive and a lot more engaging with your students. And that resource is called Pear Deck. So once you have your Google Slide presentation loaded, in order to get Pear Deck, just go ahead and select Add-ons and then select Get Add-ons. When you do that, the Add-ons window is going to pop up, and you're just going to search for the Pear Deck add-on. So once you've located the Pear Deck add-on, go ahead and select Install. In order to activate your Pear Deck add-on, just select Add-ons, Pear Deck, and then open the Pear Deck sidebar. So from within Pear Deck, you will be able to add different types of slides to your presentation, like a slide at the beginning that will introduce your lesson and get the students kind of involved and engaged that way. You can also add something during the lesson that will gauge the understanding of your students, as well as at the end of a lesson, like something like an exit ticket. After adding your items from within Pear Deck and you're ready to present, all you need to do is select the Present with Pear Deck button at the very top of your Pear Deck sidebar. Once you've selected Present with Pear Deck, you will then be taken to a website that will give you a URL as well as a code to give your students. So you want to go ahead and put this on your projector so your students will be able to join the presentation. So as soon as your students have joined your Pear Deck presentation, you will see at the very bottom that a particular amount of students have joined. From then, you'll be able to go through your presentation and lead your teacher-led station rotation, but then you will be able to have interactive, engaging parts in your presentation where the students will actually be able to take part in the presentation. So once your students have responded to the question that you're posing, you can hit the Project Student Responses button, and you'll be able to see their responses on your screen. If you would like more detailed information on Pear Deck, make sure you click on the link below to access the App of the Week video on Pear Deck. So we've seen the collaboration station where the students work together. We've also seen a station where the teacher works with a student or a group of students. Now let's take a look at how students can now work independently.
For your self-paced station, you could have your students go through a Google slide presentation that has objects that are linked to other slides within that presentation, creating a choose-your-own-adventure feel for your Google slide. So the way the students would interact with this is when they go to the slideshow, they could click on it, and then they would have objects where they could choose where they want to go. So if we are learning about how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide decimals, they could choose whichever object they wanted to learn more about. So if they wanted to learn more about adding, they can click the plus sign. They can go through a mini lesson to view how this works, and then they can begin answering questions. And as they go through each one, they can choose whichever one they feel is the correct answer. If they click one of the objects, if they get it right, it takes them to the next question. If they get it wrong, it will take them to a different slide that will have videos that they can view to review why they got the answer incorrect, and then they can always click the button down here to take them back to that question to give it a second try. So the way that we set this up is that we take one of our objects and we want to link it to a slide in our presentation. So the way that we do that is we're going to select that object. So in this case, I'm going to select the plus sign. I'm going to go to Insert, Link, and then once I do that, you see down here at the bottom it says Slides in Presentation. I can click the drop down arrow for that, and it gives me a list of all the slides in my presentation, and I can choose which slide I want this to link to. In this case, for addition, I want it to link to the Adding with Decimals mini lesson slide, which is slide number 3. I can select that, hit apply, and now this particular object is linked to take students to that particular slide. We repeated that same process for our questions and the answers for each questions. You'll see when I click on it, there's a link that takes them to the next question for the ones that are correct. But when I click on an object for links for an answer that was incorrect, it takes them to a different slide.
One of the keys that will make your station rotation really effective is to make sure that you differentiate each station for each group. You don't want to have every student going through the same activities at each station. You want to make sure that each group has activities that meets their needs at their levels at that particular station.
Great point. That's going to do it for this episode. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you check us out next week for another edition